Thanks for listening to the Clive Barker Podcast, the only podcast dedicated to the imagination of Clive Barker. In this episode, we go over Clive Barker news. For instance, what does Beetlejuice have to do with Hellbound? We catch up on the Duels of Blood at the end of Round 3, and we talk about Bafflegab's new audio drama, The Hellbound Heart. Should you buy it when it comes out? Stay tuned. And this episode is brought to you by Don Bertram's Celebrate Imagination. Don Bertram's Celebrate Imagination shop is dedicated to benefiting the arts and medicine program at Texas Children's Cancer Center. Up to 50% of the proceeds support the program where artist Don Bertram volunteers monthly. Please join us in donating to this program at Texas Children's Cancer Center. There's a link in the show notes at the main website at clivebarkercast.com that will take you where you need to go to get one of his prints or art books and help out this wonderful program. All right, well, thanks for joining us. This is episode 175, and we are returning to the Duels of Blood. But before we get there, I'm Ryan.
And I'm Joe.
And we'll start out talking about Clive Barker news. This isn't going to be super long because there isn't a huge amount of news, but Hellraiser the Toll is now available by SST Publications, and it's got that cool cover.
Yes, by Danielle Serra.
Yeah.
And it says here, UK edition of Hellraiser the Toll, available from Cemetery Dance. And if you haven't gotten it yet, this is that Mark Allen Miller novella that came out. And it involves Kirsty and the Hell Priest. So it connects briefly to the Scarlet Gospels. So, this is your chance if you live in the UK and you don't want to have to buy a book from the United States and import it. You're probably going to be able to buy this version, which has a really lovely cover.
Yeah, super cool. I like this cover better than the American cover. I think that seems to happen a lot where the UK covers are better.
Yeah, the American cover is cool too, but it just doesn't seem to be. It's a more like abstract cover, right? It's got a gigantic box in the middle of a jungle, and that is not something that happens in the story.
Right.
But it's a striking cover to say the least. Yeah.
Yeah. And speaking of Hellraiser artwork, or I guess Clive Barker artwork, the Death's Head poster you can get for sale now. And Death's Head is a painting that is you may have seen on like Rue Morgue's cover, and it was on, I think, was it on Paul Kane's Monsters, right? Yes,
it was. That's true. Yeah. So, and it was also in. It's going to be included in Volume 5 of the Imaginer books.
That's awesome. Yeah. So now there's an A3 sized poster available for sale. Let's see. What are the details of that?
Oh, the price is $11, and it's about, in case Americans don't know what the A3 size is, it's about 11.7 by 16.5 inches, and so the price is, I said $11? Okay, it's from the CliveBarkerArchive.com, so you go to their store and they're selling it, and it says here price, $7 plus shipping. And you can get that. It's Death's Head. It's a painting from 2004. It was used as the cover for Rue Morgue magazine, and I think it was one of those big issues. There was like a big number.
Yeah.
I forgot exactly which one. Let me see if I can remember. But yeah, it's a very striking cover, and it was, I think, Rue Morgue magazine number. Oh shucks, I forgot. Well, we'll get back to that.
I think it was Rue Morgue around like 2011, 2012, because it was the time I was going to conventions for Occupy Media, and I remember seeing that at their booths and stuff.
Right, yeah. It was number 41 from Halloween of 2004. Yes, that's it.
2004. Maybe they just were proud of that one then.
Yeah. The cover had the return of Clive Barker, the definitive interview, and also talked about a retrospective about Friday the 13th and George Romero comics. So there you go. That was from 2004, Rue Morgue number 41, if you want to go there and check out what it looked like.
And this one really quick, there was a Q&A, a Cenobite. I wish we had known about this before. We only learned about it after the fact, right? But there was a Hellraiser 2 screening and Q&A that had Doug Bradley, Peter Atkins, and Tony Randel, which would have been really nice to... I mean, I don't think we would have been able to go, but it would have been nice to be able to tell people about it, because you don't really see that group together very often. I mean, like, you see the actors, but you don't see Pete Atkins and Tony Randall at these things. So.
Right. This took place at the Screamfest Horror Festival, and it was a Hellraiser 2 30th anniversary screening Q&A. And Tony Randall and Peter Atkins, along with Doug Bradley, the panel was moderated by Brian Collins of Birth Movies Death, and it took place on April 15th in Hollywood, California. Yeah. So I think we made a blog post about it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's just, I think it was just in the, somebody had posted it to our I think somebody had posted a YouTube link to our
Facebook page.
Yeah.
Right. So it's a 42-minute video, which means there was a lot of stuff to sort through here, and a lot of interesting information. I honestly haven't had the time because I was working really hard the last few days, and I didn't have the time to actually watch this whole video. But there is a nice detail that came out about this meeting from Bloody Disgusting, the website, right?
Yeah. Yeah, so one little tidbit that came out of it, the Bloody Disgusting writer came after the Q&A was over. He went and talked to, was it, I think, Pete Atkins? And
yeah.
And found out that Pete Atkins wasn't the original writer that they had for Hellraiser 2. It was going to be the writer for Beetlejuice.
Yes, Michael McDowell.
Yeah. And but he had a family emergency, or he had a family tragedy. He'd lost his partner and ended up having to back out. And Clive Barker, personally chose Peter Atkins and got him started in the screenwriting industry.
Right. So here's what the article goes on to quote Peter Atkins, and it says here, Clive called me and said, "Funny question. Have you ever written a screenplay?" And Pete Atkins said, "Honestly, no, I haven't, Clive." And then Clive said, "Well, look, if a producer calls you in 5 minutes and asks you the same question, are you prepared to lie?" And I said, equally honestly, "Oh, yes, Clive." So basically, that's how he came to write Hellbound.
Yeah.
So yeah, there you go.
And Hellbound is really cool, and I'm glad that it came out the way it did. I mean, we don't know what it would have been like, I guess we'll never know what it would have been like, because it didn't. I don't think he even got started on it, but
yeah, the article goes on to say that Barker did give Atkins the ideas for the screenplay, but it wasn't quite as formal as the outline as the word outline suggests. He said, I think this is a quote by Pete Atkins, "I'm sure Clive told the executives that he had an outline, but what happened was he said, 'Come around to the house, I've got a bottle,'" said Peter Atkins. Yeah. "We just jammed over an increasingly empty bottle of vodka. Then they put me on a train back to Liverpool, and I wrote a 10-page based on the drunken conversations we had. Then they brought me back to London, put me in a hotel, and I wrote the screenplay. That's not to downplay Clive's involvement at all. Obviously, he originated the entire series. He's quite smart and has many ideas. It was reminiscent of the theater days workshopping." So that's how Hellbound happened, the jamming ideas over a bottle of vodka between Clive Barker and Pete Atkins, and then he just went ahead and did it.
Yeah, that's cool. And next up, we got the Clive Barker listener party. For those of you going to Texas Frightmare Weekend, this is probably the last time we're going to talk about this, because it's, Jose, like you and I were just talking about before we started recording, it's getting pretty filled up. So, and it's in our, our house that we're renting while we're there. So, but it's at 11 o'clock a.m. on Friday, the 4th of May. And if you want to go, if you're going to be there at Texas Frightmare Weekend, email one of us. Just go on the website, clivebarkercast.com, find our one of our emails, and let us know that you want to go, and we'll put you down.
Yeah, or just message us through our Facebook page as well.
Yeah, and we'll give you the address or whatever, and you can we'll be happy to see you there. But like I said, I think that we're kind of gonna downplay this now because it's starting to get full, and even our crew is actually we got 5 of us just flying in from the BarkerCast. So. Yeah.
And Barn of the Blood Llama is not a movie for everybody, to be honest. I mean, that thing is like crazy. Have you seen it yet?
Mm-mm.
Okay.
No, I meant to download it last night, but I ended up spending the whole time reading Hellraiser novels.
I can tell you, it's pretty out there. All right, it's pretty out there, and there's like llamas, and there's like a crazy doctor who swaps brains, and there's like. And Clive Barker's in the beginning of the movie for just maybe like a couple of minutes, just talking about a thing called the male berserker syndrome. And it's a funny story how he got involved in the movie, and I'll save that for the commentary track.
All right. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I've been debating on if I want to watch that before I go or just, load it up onto my iPad and watch it on the plane.
Sure. I mean, it's up to you. It's you can do it on the plane. I'm sure you'll get some really crazy side eyes from the people sitting next to you.
Yeah. I've got a 12-hour flight ahead of me for that, so.
Oh God. Yeah. I'm so sorry.
That's why I may be saving it for that, cuz I'm going to need stuff to do. I might also work on some transcribing, for as long as I can take it.
Oh, right. Yeah. So I'm looking forward to that. It's going to be a cool event. And for me, for example, I haven't been to that many conventions. In fact, this is probably going to be my first major convention that I'm going to go to, and I don't really know what to expect. But hey, I'm ready. I'm willing. Let's do it. We'll take our microphones, we'll take our cameras, and we'll cover all this stuff. We're already trying to get a room at the hotel to talk to some of the Cenobite actors, and it's either going to be there or the pool. We haven't figured it out yet, but we'll keep you guys posted, and we'll cover as much as we can. And we're going to meet Clive, I guess. We're going to see if we can meet Clive.
I'm trying to organize as much as I can, but it's already starting to feel like chaos. We've got Thursday and Friday completely mapped out, and then like Saturday and Sunday so far away. I don't know what we're doing, but so I guess we can leave some things to just chance or just plan them while we're there. But
we'll be doing something fun for sure.
Yeah. Yep. All right. And then so that brings us over to the Duels of Blood, the end of round 3. And man, it was funny.
That was crazy. Look at all these votes. What's going on here?
There were some really active people from Lori and her friends voting for Butterball. And,
from Simon Bamford fans.
Yep, and then Paul T. Taylor's fans voting for him. And between all of them, I was, it's like I had the website or the voting stopped early because apparently at some point some WordPress update caused the time the time zone to change to UTC, and I didn't know.
Yeah.
So it ended early, which is like 9 hours ahead of when it was supposed to. And so I had Lori telling me while I'm still at work, like, hey, this was supposed to be ending and it didn't. Or this ended already, and I was just getting ready to go vote again. And like, okay, well, I get home from work in 30 minutes. I'll go look at it.
Well, there weren't any big surprises in this third round of the Duels of Blood. I mean, there was only one big surprise, which is more of a disappointment.
Yeah.
But all the other matchups, so how many were there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So there were eight battles, so to speak.
Yeah.
And they all pretty much went to the person that I thought they were going, except for one.
Yeah.
And I have no idea what happened there. What happened, dude?
I know.
Who are these fans of Revelations who keep voting on this horrible character, the pseudo Pinhead?
Yeah. I know. You and I just read the Sculptress story, and damn it, that's a good story.
It is a good story. Yeah. It's one of those stories that. It's from John Rossum, who also wrote some of the books of the Damned, and he wrote at least 3 stories for the Marvel epic Hellraiser comics. One of them was called Homecoming. The other is called With My Lips. And there was another one that we already talked about in a previous issue. I forgot the title. But yeah, about the brother who comes back from hell to visit. Well, that was Homecoming, right? Yeah, that was Homecoming. Yeah, that's the one we saw. Yeah, right. So, we'll start with the first one, I guess. The Dr. Chenard versus the engineer creature.
Yeah, and I have to say, I'm one of those people that voted a lot for the engineer just because I love that monster so much. I mean, Dr. Chenard is great, too. I don't really like some of his Freddy Krueger lines that much, but
I recommend amputation.
The doctor is in.
Yeah.
But he won. I think I'm not disappointed with that. I think that's a good choice. He is an actual actor instead of a puppet, so it's cool. He had 57% of the votes. The engineer had 43% of the votes. I think we're going to see a lot of them were kind of close like that. Most of these matchups were that way.
I was very happy to. I've been talking to. We mentioned him before in the show, and here's a shout out. Hey Ed, how are you doing today? And Ed Martinez, he worked in special effects, and he was a huge and is a huge Hellraiser fan. He was one of the guys who created the fanzine Cenobium. And we were talking recently. He told me that for you engineer fans out there, and he certainly had 1,036 votes. Wow.
Yeah.
How many of those are yours, Ryan?
Probably like 10 or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, just to put some minds at ease, the engineer puppet is alive and well, and it's in the hands of a fan who had it restored. So.
Oh wow, that would be so cool to see that on a big display.
Well, I don't know if the person who owns the puppet is a listener, but I would love to see how this thing has held up over the years as well. But from what I was told by Ed Martinez, he knows a lot of big collectors of Hellraiser in the fandom, and he told me that, yes, there's a guy who owns the engineer puppet, and it's been restored, and it looks great. So,
wow. That is awesome.
So Dr. Chenard takes this one, and he moves on to round 4 of Duels of Blood.
Yeah, and then we've got Kirsty Pinhead versus Judgment Pinhead. So the Judgment Pinhead fans were out, and I think the counter, Judgment fans were also out because there were 1,300 votes for Kirsty Pinhead, which I don't know if that was voting against. Like last round, it was clearly people voting against Judgment Pinhead, but I think this round, I don't know. Kirsty Pinhead is also a cool character.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I mean, but for sure, the Paul T. Taylor brought the whole army along, and just this one match between Kirsty Pinhead and Paul T. Taylor's Pinhead had 3,214 votes, and if you add that to the first one with Dr. Chenard and the engineer, that had 2,393 votes. Just these two matches together had as many votes as, I guess, some rounds that we had before all together.
Yeah.
So that is pretty amazing, the number of votes that we had on this round 3 of volume 3.
I think this is a new record for us.
I think so too. Yes. Congratulations, Paul T. Taylor. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, he moves on. I've been thinking, like, for next year maybe of doing this with Nightbreed, because I think we could come up with 64 Nightbreed characters between the
You think so?
Between the comics and the movie.
Oh, right. Yes. Okay. Sure. Yeah, maybe we'll start writing down names and see if we can come up with 64 of those.
Luckily, we have a whole year to decide about that. But
right.
Yeah. And then we've got female Cenobite versus female Cenobite. The Hellraiser 1, Grace Kirby versus the Hellraiser 2, Barbie Wilde. And
no big surprise here. No big surprise. I mean, I like both of them, but I prefer the Barbie Wilde one just because it's a much more interesting. I don't know. It just strikes me as a more interesting personality in Hellraiser Hellbound.
Yeah. I like and it's easier to vote for somebody that you know. I mean, Barbie Wilde, we've had her on the show a couple of times. She's been to conventions, for Hellraiser. Grace Kirby sort of disowned the whole thing. And
yeah, a little bit.
Her character is cool in Hellraiser, but it kind of stops, after Hellraiser, and she doesn't want anything to do with it anymore, where Barbie Wilde embraces it. So, she got my vote mainly because of that, but I like both of them.
And they had plenty of votes as well, with a total of 2,039 just for this battle as well. And Barbie Wilde wins and moves on to round 4 with 52% of the votes. Yeah. It was pretty much head to head almost,
Yeah. In the
48 versus 52.
And in the beginning, it was the Hellraiser female Cenobite. It was the Grace Kirby one was ahead for the first half of this, the first week or so, and then Barbie Wilde's started to edge her out, and she kind of kept her lead up for the second week.
That is awesome. And and again, we did this completely randomly, right? You used a randomizer to make these matches, and it just turned out this way. It wasn't intentional.
Yeah. And then our next match, the Spooky Skeletons match.
The Spooky Skeletons.
Yeah, we got Gehenna from the comics versus the Puzzle Guardian from Hellraiser, the big dragon skeleton guy with the horns coming out of his eye sockets. Mm-hmm. So the Puzzle Guardian won. This was probably the biggest upset out of all of them, right? Because he won with 62% of the votes. And all the other matches were closer.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, the closest one I would say is the one we're going to say after this one.
Yeah.
But a Puzzle Guardian, I mean, come on, everybody loves that ending of Hellraiser where you see the Puzzle Guardian walking over to the fire. Yeah. And I guess I should say spoilers, but hey, the movie's over 30 years old now, so I guess the statute of limitations is out. And if you're listening to this and you haven't seen Hellraiser, I mean, what are you doing with your life, right?
Yeah, right.
Go watch Hellraiser.
And another cool thing about the Puzzle Guardian is that nobody could ever say that they predicted that would happen, right? It's like, you can totally see that coming. The bum's gonna walk into the fire and he'll turn into a dragon skeleton. No, I mean, no one knew that was coming. That was just like, what is going on?
Yeah, and Puzzle Guardian. I mean, there's an advantage that he was in the actual movie, and Gehenna is just a comic book character. That also has some impact on the result, obviously. But hey, Puzzle Guardian. Moving on to the next one, I'm looking forward to see who's going to go up against Puzzle Guardian because these are all heavy hitters. Yeah. Moving to round 4.
Yeah, and then we got Chatterer versus Butterball, and of course this was a tough fight. I think that both are great characters. Butterball won by just less than 100 votes. Only 51% of the votes went
This was the closest one. It was 51% versus 49%. So Butterball wins, and that means that Simon Banford moves on to round 4, and unfortunately Nicholas Vince's Chatterer didn't make it. Yeah. So again, these things are it's just the way it is. You pit two characters against each other, and only one can win. No flesh shall be spared, like we say in our tagline. Sorry, Nicholas Vince, but only one of you can move forward, so Simon takes the lead.
1,384 votes is still really good. And we got next one, Bright Eyes and the Voice versus Skinless Julia. This one went back and forth quite a bit over the course of the 2 weeks. But Skinless Julia, movie character, beat the comics characters. And so far, we haven't really seen. I don't know if we are going to or not, but we haven't really seen a really strong origin story for Bright Eyes and the Voice, right? They've still been kind of peripheral characters in the comics.
Yes, a bit like Hunger, the Cenobite from the comics, except Hunger has a little more dialogue. But Bright Eyes and the Voice show up in a couple of stories, I think, maybe 2 or 3. Tops, and they don't really say much, but so I'm surprised that they got so many votes. They got about 906 votes versus Julia's 1,071. So Julia wins with 54% of the vote. No big surprise there because obviously Skinless Julia, well, this is skinless Julia. We had Julia win an entire round of the Duels of Blood once.
Yeah.
So that was kind of expected that Julia is going to go pretty far. So
I wasn't sure whether to put her in there, but I think she is a Cenobite, right? I mean, she's serving Leviathan as kind of a queen or something. You know, she calls herself the Wicked Queen. So I think she is a Cenobite. She just doesn't have the piercings and all that.
Yeah, I guess she's kind of like Frank after he comes back from hell, except Frank wasn't working for Leviathan and Julia is.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I guess it would be accurate. Why not?
She's either that or she's like a puzzle guardian, or I don't know exactly what she is, but she's supposed to come in and get souls, so she picked Dr. Chenard.
Yeah, and so the next matchup is just something that completely blows my mind and leaves me a little disappointed, I have to say, because, geez Louise, I mean, Pseudo Pinhead from Revelations took the lead over the Sculptress from the comic books. And I know that the image from the Sculptress doesn't really show her face, but if you guys have read the story, that's such a good story. It's just a powerful story by John Rossum, who I know listens to the podcast, or at least listened to our episodes about the Books of the Damned, because he posted about it on his personal blog. So, hey, John Rossum, you got robbed. You got robbed, man, because this crappy Cenobite, Pseudo Pinhead, or what did you call him? Like Great Value Pinhead?
No, he's the American cheese Pinhead.
American cheese slice Pinhead.
Yeah, or Velveeta.
Who is out there voting for this guy? Really? I mean, let us know.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to see us not do the Duels of Blood next year, then make him the winner of the whole tournament.
I'm gonna say right now, I'm gonna ban this guy from ever being in the Duels of Blood again.
Yeah.
Sorry, but it's like he does not deserve 1,291 votes. Okay, I don't know who was doing that.
No.
Yeah. Well, anyway, so we have to roll with the punches here. So Pseudo Pinhead moves on to round 4 of the Duels of Blood for some strange reason. Okay.
And this one was scary, and I don't know why. This next one, we had Yama Vidatu from the Jihad comics, right? She's kind of a red shirt, and I mean, I don't think she got killed, but she's not she's just not a super exciting character.
She barely has any lines from what I recall in Jihad.
Yeah. And she was ahead of Pinhead for a long time. She kept beating him. And it's like, what is going on? I mean, is this people just wanting to vote against Pinhead to be like, I don't know, counter, I guess? Or it's weird.
It is definitely strange. But I'm glad that sanity prevailed ultimately. And Yama Vidatu unfortunately lost 43% to Pinhead's Doug Bradley's Pinhead, by the way, from Hellraiser 1. He won by 57% with 1,292 votes.
Yeah. Hipster was the word I was thinking of. Is this like Yama Vidatu is the hipster vote? I don't know.
I liked Yama Vidatu before it was cool.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, there's someone out there saying that, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know. But I'm glad that Pinhead moved on. I mean, he should. Also, Chatterer should, but these matchups were random, which leads us into the next round, the random matchups. And as you're listening to this, you'll be able to start voting. But while we're recording, I still need to build that website. I got to start on it anyway.
Okay.
But we've got Dr. Chenard versus Judgment Pinhead. I think that's, he's had it easy up until now, but now that's going to be a tougher match.
That's going to be tough.
Classic fans versus Judgment fans, and that's hasn't happened yet in this year.
Let's see how many votes Chenard had on this round. He had 1,357, and Pinhead from Judgment had 1,911. So I would say that Paul T. Taylor's Pinhead has a chance. Yeah. And I'm just kind of anxious about it because I'm wondering, what if we end up with like Paul T. Taylor's Pinhead versus Hellraiser 1 Pinhead.
That was on my mind too, and I think a lot of it has to do with how much campaigning a person does, right? I mean, like if Doug Bradley said, "Hey everybody," on Twitter, if he said, "Hey everybody, go to Duels of Blood and vote,"
oh sure,
it would be much different. But he's probably not going to do that because I don't think he gives a rip,
Yeah.
But yeah,
I don't know.
It's really interesting.
Let's see.
Yeah,
Let's see. I mean, I'm interested in seeing what's going to happen because Dr. Chenard is a classic Cenobite, but he wasn't like super exposed. I mean, he only showed up in one movie, but he has such a cult classic following, right? There's so many people out there who, despite the fact that he's like against Pinhead, some people say that he's connected to Leviathan and all that, and, that he doesn't like what Pinhead is doing, and that's why he connects Dr. Chenard as a way to use him as an instrument to counter what Pinhead is doing. I don't know if that's true or not.
Yeah, this
is all theories, but
he also seemed to have his own personality too, and so it's hard to say.
Yeah. So, and then Group 2 will be Pinhead versus Puzzle Guardian from Hellraiser 1.
Yeah. Yeah, that's an interesting matchup. I mean, I would say that I think that's pretty clear who's going to win, but after what happened with Yama v Datu, like, who knows?
Right. I think this will be the Group 3 will be the group that'll rid us of the pseudo Pinhead. He's going up against female Cenobite from Hellraiser 2.
It had better. I mean, geez.
We can tell Barbie Wilde, hey, this Kraft American cheese slice Pinhead can't win against Deep Throat. So go ahead and put it on your Facebook page, Barbie Wilde, and get the fans rallied up. Let's end this travesty and get rid of this character.
Yeah.
I honestly thought he was going to lose in the first round. I can't understand how he's making it to round 4.
No, yeah, he needs to go.
Yeah.
We can be partial and we can say that if we want. I want him out. I'm sorry that I put him in there in the first place.
I don't give a rip. I want this guy out of here.
Yeah.
He's an imposter and a fraud.
Yeah.
Okay, and then Group 4, Skinless Julia versus Butterball. So, Simon Bamford's in trouble.
Yeah, he's got a tough match. I mean, he had a tough match last time too.
He did.
Actually, probably round 3 was against the Chatterer was even harder than Skinless Julia, I think. But who knows? I mean, I don't know what's going to happen.
Yep. So when do we open votes for round 4?
When this airs, it'll be 8 a.m. Sunday morning. So it'll at the same time as this podcast airs, you'll be able to go over to duelsofblood.com and vote on this round 4.
Excellent. And let's see, we're getting close. It's getting exciting.
Yeah.
Who's going to win?
Yeah.
Is it going to be Pinhead? Is it going to be Barbie Wilde? It would be nice to have Barbie Wilde win this time, I guess.
And those results, we may be sharing the results of round 4 with the actual actors live in Texas, because it'll end on the Thursday right before of Texas Frightmare weekend.
Oh, that's cool. That's going to be interesting. Yeah, we'll let them know.
Yeah.
And maybe they'll go on their social media and say, hey, vote for me.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's cool. And maybe on Sunday we'll have, we can have people going by, voting on a laptop or something.
Sure, why not? That sounds good.
All right. So we've got next thing, we got a chance to early listen to Bafflegab Productions' Hellbound Heart audio drama.
That's right. This is going to come out 6 days from now, or 5 days from the time you're listening to this, on April 27th.
Yeah, and so they gave us a review copy to listen to, which I'm super grateful for, because honestly, I thought, well, I've already got the audiobook going into it, and I was surprised to find out that it was like a full-on production. It was like a movie for your ears.
Yeah.
Well, I was just going to say, which was cool.
Yeah, I mean, people may go into this thinking they're going to listen to an audiobook, and to some extent, I thought kind of the same a little bit. I didn't know what to expect. I've read, okay, so Paul Kane from the Hellraiser films and their legacy, and read and Sherlock Holmes and the Servants of Hell and Monsters and all that. Mm-hmm. So he adapted the Hellbound Heart novella by Clive Barker and updated it a little bit for modern times, right? And here's the synopsis for this audio drama. It says, when Frank Cotton, Tom Meaton, finally acquires a fabled puzzle box, he gets more than he bargained for, because the box is a doorway to another world, to hell and its dubious pleasures, ruled over by sadistic Cenobites. And Frank's reward for opening the box is an eternity of pain beyond imagining. But when his brother Rory and his wife Julia, Neve McIntosh, move into the house where Frank conducted the ritual, he sees a means of escape. For Julia was once Frank's lover and swore to do anything for him, even kill if it would make Frank whole again. Julia will stop at nothing to bring her lover back from hell, and only Rory's friend Kirsty, played by Alice Lowe, unwittingly stands in their way. Starring Alice Lowe from Prevenge and Sightseers, Tom Meaton from The Ghoul, and Neve McIntosh from Doctor Who. This is a faithful, full-cast adaptation of Clive Barker's novella, adapted for the screen as the classic horror movie Hellraiser by Paul Kane of Sherlock Holmes and the Servants of Hell.
Yeah.
So, cool little bit of trivia. You look at the cast, and Tom Meaton played both Frank and Rory Cotton.
Yeah, and I didn't know that when I listened to it until after I got finished and I read the cast. I'm like, wow, because he sounded pretty different. You know, those two characters sounded different from each other.
They did. But you could still, kind of feel that there was some sort of, similarity. And I think that was interesting, because that kind of puts in that sort of familial relationship, because they're brothers.
Right.
So
more so than in Hellraiser, where the two brothers had, one was from England and the other was from America.
Yeah. Yeah. And they had totally different voices. So when Frank would put Larry's skin, you're wondering, well, why does he sound like Larry now instead of Frank, right?
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's true that sometimes brothers can be similar and even sound similar, but sometimes brothers can also be different. So I never hung up too much on that point.
Yeah. One really interesting thing about this audio drama is it's all told through dialogue, music, and sound effects. There's no description at all. So, if you think it's going to be like the audiobook, like I did going into it, it was kind of a nice surprise. Like, oh, this is actually kind of done like a radio play in a way. It's all told in just through in a natural kind of a way.
Yes, it's a fascinating new production of the Hellbound Heart, slightly reimagined. There are things that work in the written page, right, that have to be redesigned when you're translating it to an audio production. Because when you read, the author can convey, stroke by stroke what's going on in the scene. Mm-hmm. They can take you into the mind of the characters, tell you what they're thinking. In an audio production, you have to include often expositionary dialogue. Yeah. And in this production, there are new characters introduced and made up for that convenience. Like there's a woman called Amy. That's a new character. She's she's Kirsty's friend
at the office. Yeah.
Yeah. And she's used to bounce some exposition from Kirsty that can't be shown visually. I mean, sometimes they're talking, they're saying, "Oh, I was at Rory's and I saw that there was someone up there looking down at me, and I think that Julia's having an affair." And Amy's offering suggestions and saying, "Oh, you should stay away from that because it's all going to blow up in your face." Yeah. And it's like none of that stuff is in the novella, but you need it so you can bounce some of this exposition from Kirsty, right?
And there's also a extra expositionary dialogue from Frank, where one scene that stuck out to me where he was describing what the Cenobites looked like to Julia, which I thought was a nice touch, because otherwise, it's an audio production, you're not going to know at all what they looked like, because that was all done in description in the Hellbound Heart.
Yeah, there's a clever change to Frank's first appearance. The production opens with Frank talking with Kircher, and getting advice and bartering for the box, and then Kircher's telling him, well, you should do it like this. You should get a plate of dove's heads, and then you should get also a week's worth of piss in a jug and all that. And it's like none of that stuff is in the novella except as kind of a narrated flashback about what Frank had to do.
Yeah.
Right. And also the novella, of course, opens with Frank trying to open the box. Okay, that's our introduction in the novella, is Frank's opening the box, then he opens it, and then the Cenobites come, and before that he does have that heightened sensation experience he goes through, where he gets flooded with memories and sensations, and he hears distant things far away. He looks at his clothes and he can see the weave of the fabric, and he can taste like the gravy and the morsel stuck between two teeth, and of course he gets overwhelmed by sensation, and he masturbates on the floor and faints, overwhelmed by all the sensation, and then he wakes up and the Cenobites are there. In this one, he opens up the box and the Cenobites appear, and then it cuts to Rory and Julia going into the house. And what happened to Frank is not seen until he actually is talking to Julia after she brings him back.
Yeah, so that he can explain it to someone instead of having it explained again through narration. Yeah. Right,
because there's nobody there when Frank is opening the boxes by himself, so it's hard to have a narrator say, Frank opened the box, and then he did this, and then he did that. So that's not going to happen, but
Yeah, it would be kind of lame to go like, okay, well, I'm opening the box now.
Right.
Boy, you sure are ugly. You have pins coming out of your head, and
Right. Yeah, so, it was great. All the beats are included. The dialogue is in many instances rewritten, although a lot of the lines are still preserved. So in some ways, it's a streamlined and adapted version of the novella, but I mean, if anyone could do it, I think Paul Kane could, and he did.
Yeah, and I loved particularly the sound design. I liked the music, and the sound effects were really good. There was a sound of Frank feeding on his victims that was like this slurpy kind of. It was really unnerving. I thought it was great though.
It's a You hear that noise? It's like right? I mean, great sound design. The ambient really envelops you and delivers you onto a room. Then it's a landscape or a storm, and you hear like when the scene where Julia is telling Rory not to go upstairs when there's a storm because he hears like Frank walking around on the attic on the damp room, and then you hear these like thunders going like, and it like goes from one ear to the other. So this is something you want to experience with microphones, right?
Yeah.
Very, very well
headphones. Done. Yeah. And it made me. Right. This made me rethink my trepidation about a Hellraiser remake, because I think that being able to re-experience Hellraiser like this, or the Hellbound Heart in this case, was kind of refreshing. It was something new, but it was still old, and I loved it because we've seen Hellraiser a million times, and it's hard to get emotionally drawn into the suspense and stuff like that because you've seen it so many times. But here, seeing a new kind of fresh eyes or fresh ears was neat. I really liked it.
Right, it's a little disarming, and it keeps you more connected to what's going on, because it's like I could recite by memory lots of sections from the Hellbound Heart. When Frank is, solving the box, and then he hears a great bell begin to ring, and he was like 6 black lacquered faces, the whereabouts of the pressure points, could not be determined, blah, blah, blah. And I could say that because I've read the novella so many times. But then when you're listening to this, it's like, oh, okay, so, hey, wait, who's this person? Oh, and where's that part? And then you're like, oh, okay. Oh, this is what they're doing. All right. So cool.
Yeah. And Kirsty has a cell phone, and the doctor's like, hey, or he was like, oh, we wanted to give her cell phone so she could call the police. Yeah. Right. Just some stuff that's like, well, this is not happening in 1986.
No, no.
Yeah.
It takes place. It's more modern right now, and for example, I thought that the voice, the actor Meaton, the guy who plays Rory and Frank, had a really amazing voice. And in some ways, when he's playing Frank, it reminds me a lot of Oliver Smith's voice in the movie.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
very
it
similar.
was gravelly.
Yeah, very gravelly. And Julia
Was amazing.
Julia was amazing, and she's played by this actress, and she's Scottish. So Julia here has a Scottish accent,
Yeah.
which is kind of charming, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it fits the character, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was done in still sort of a cold way, but you could feel, maybe even a little more than Hellraiser, you could feel the attraction that she has to Frank.
Mm-hmm.
I think
yes.
that was played out a little bit more.
And there's a clever change to Frank's first appearance in the damp room, because we don't have a visual aid to see Frank stuck in the wall in front of Julia, opening the rift and asking Julia for blood. So there's a part where it may be a little confusing, but because you only hear Julia goes into the damp room and you hear this noise and it's like this ominous music and you hear this whoosh, this whooshing thing. And then you hear like, oh my God, what is that? And it's like you hear like Frank and you hear blood, blood. And then, but you don't know what's going on if you haven't read the book. And so Paul Kane added a dream sequence to make that clearer, where Julia is dreaming of, it's another one of those flashbacks where Julia, this time she's dreaming of making love to Frank in her wedding dress. And then a blood spot starts spreading on the dress. And then Frank turns into like this monster and asks her for blood to bring him back.
Yeah.
And so now you know what's going on. And now you understand a little better what was that scene about. It's like, he wants blood. The blood brought me back. You need to get more blood. And he talks to her through a dream. So I thought that was really clever, because you don't have the visuals to see Frank opening the wall and asking for blood. So he put it in a dream. That was really good. Kudos, Paul. That was good scene, good sequence.
Yeah. Overall, this was a really, really creative adaptation, and really cool. It was, I think, refreshing and interesting. So I did a review of it also on CliveBarkerCast.com if you want. I mean, we've kind of hit all the beats, I think, in that. But if you want to read my review too, Bafflegab retweeted it and stuff, which was nice.
Pretty cool. Yeah, I read your review. Really, really interesting. I think that they managed to include an entire novella in 75 minutes. So, of course, sometimes the only thing I have to say is sometimes it feels like the story just keeps on going really fast in some sections. Yeah. But that's just because you don't have like 2-3 hours to like read the book. And this is not the audiobook. So you have to like cut a few parts out, rewrite a few others, and restructure the whole thing. And it becomes 75 minutes, but everything is in it. I mean, I would say 99% of the Hellbound Heart novella that matters is in here. Although I noticed the absence of the engineer, right? I mean, the engineer is never mentioned.
Right. Yeah.
Even though he makes this almost uncredited appearance at the end. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I was looking for that too, with his pyramid head and stuff.
Yeah. And the Cenobites telling Frank that the engineer should appear should the situation merit. Yeah. That's not in this. That's not in this adaptation. But at the end, after everything happens, and Kirsty escapes, that scene at the end of the novella where this creature or this person bumps into her and gives her the box, it's here. It is here. Yeah. But it's slightly altered, so I'm not going to spoil it for anybody. But so that should be the engineer. But what they do is pretty clever. So
everybody should go out and get this when it's available from Bafflegab's website. And I think they said it is also going to be available on Amazon as a download. And I don't know if that's only Amazon.co.uk or if it's like all Amazon. But yeah, check it out. You can get
it's on Amazon.com.
Oh, is it? Okay. And
yes, I'm looking at it on the page.
And you can get it as a CD version or as an MP3 download.
That's cool, yeah, because if you're not into the whole physical thing. But you should, because it's nice to have. The cover is really cute, too. That's really amazing cover. It's almost like this anti-Kirsty Pinhead in the cover.
Right.
Yeah, dressed in these black, flowy, stripe-like robes,
I think
holding the box.
Yeah, and I think to show the androgyny of the Pinhead character from the Hellbound Heart, which was a little different than, what became Pinhead in Hellraiser.
Yeah. So this was produced and directed by Simon Barnard of Bafflegab. The sound design was by Simon Robinson. Music by Edwin Sykes. The artwork for the release is by Matthew Dow Smith. And designed by Matt Bright. And this was recorded at the Moat Studios. I don't know if I should say Moat or M-O-A-T in London. It's 75 minutes long. And it's going to be released on April 27th. So go ahead and pre-order this. We'll add some links to the show notes.
Yeah. Looking forward to what you guys all think, too. Let us know once you get a chance to listen to it.
Yeah, there's still a tinkling of the box too. Did you catch that? But it's more like wind chimes in this production.
Yeah, that was cool. Yeah, and you didn't hear the bell, like the church bell sound.
Yeah, so intent was Frank upon solving the puzzle of Le Marchand's box that he did not hear the great bell begin to ring. Blah 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 blah. That's how much I've read this book. I can always recite that. Yeah. And the arrival of the Cenobites, it was marked by these really cool electrical spark sound effects too.
Yeah, right. And
just like in the movie.
Yeah. So that was cool. There were little hints of the movie, but it was mostly the Hellbound Heart. It was mostly faithful to the Hellbound Heart. And is there anything else you wanted to say about that before we kind of move on?
Yeah, totally recommended. I would say practically a perfect score for this. I'm going to say 10 out of 10. Go ahead and get it because this is freaking amazing. All right. Yeah. I loved it. I'm going to buy the actual physical CD and I want to own a copy of this for myself.
On my review, I put 9.5 out of 10, and they had one tweet where they're like, "We got 2 good reviews." One, from Clive Barker Podcast was 9.5, and then this other one from some other site was 10. I'm like, I thought 9.5 was good. I don't, I guess I could have done 10, but it seems like 10 is, I don't know. I
had teachers like that.
It's hard to rate something at 10.
There is no perfect score.
Yeah. And that was kind of like, there were a couple of things that took me out a little bit, and then maybe that's on me, but the thing about the cell phone, that, you start thinking about, so this doesn't take place in 1986, and then before you know it, you're out of the story and it's going on without you.
Sure. Yeah.
I had that happen, and there was one other thing about Kirsty sending a bunch of emails in her office job, right? You wouldn't be doing that in 1986. I mean, email existed, but not in people's offices.
It took me about 5 minutes just to get used to the idea that, hey, this is not an audiobook. This is an audio drama. Yeah. And because I was like, who are these characters? Wait, that's not what they say in the book. And then I was like, you know what? Fine. Okay. Let's just, and that kept me on my toes and made me more involved with the story because I was like, well, I have to pay attention now. I have to see what they're doing. I can't just let this play in the background. That's why I listened to it twice, because the second time around I was like, all right, let's take it as it's something completely different but similar. Okay. Different, but an adaptation. Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, there were some little changes that were done. Sometimes I didn't entirely understand why they changed it. Like when the Cenobite tells Kirsty in the novella, the Cenobite says something like, "Oh, you've opened this from ignorance, right?"
Yeah.
And in the production, they say, "Oh, you opened the box from innocence or in innocence, right?"
Right.
And it's like ignorance and innocence, maybe not synonyms in the situation that they're talking about, but at the same time, maybe you can actually argue that Kirsty opening the box without knowing what it is could be construed as opening it in innocence.
Right. Yeah.
So okay, whatever.
That's yeah. I mean, maybe they could have just gone with the original line rather than
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think it being different enough was enough to get you really invested and on the tip of your toes or the edge of your seat, whatever metaphor, I guess.
And here's the connection to the original Hellraiser is that Nicholas Vince plays Cenobite 4.
Oh, yeah.
And one of the businessmen that Julia kills. So pay attention to that. You'll recognize his voice almost immediately, I'm assuming. I mean, not the Cenobite 4 because it's altered, but the businessman, I was like, hey, that sounds like Nicholas Vince. Let me check the cast. Oh, yeah, that's Nicholas Vince.
Yeah, that was a cool kind of an Easter egg thing that got put in there. I really liked that. We'll probably be talking to him about it here at Texas Frightmare Weekend.
Absolutely. So you posted a lot of pictures on your review, and I urge people to go there and check it out because there's a lot of good stuff that you said in your review, and there's a gallery of pictures of the production. So go check it out on our blog.
Yeah. And the other thing we have on the site, just our previous episode 173, if you didn't listen to it, get caught up on Hellraiser issues 8 through 10, because our next episode is going to be issues 11 through 13 for next week. So you want to get caught up on those so you can, I guess that's your homework, so that you can follow along with us and debate with us about these stories.
Because the Devil's Brigade continues, and there's lots of parts that are going to be contained in those next 3 issues. And there's, of course, a thread that follows 5 different people and 5 different Cenobites, right?
Yeah. That'll be interesting too, and that'll be our next episode. And this podcast, having no beginning, will have no end. Find the show notes for this episode and join the discussion over at www.clivebarkercast.com, where we have news and links to all the ways you can connect with us. You can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and every other place you can find podcasts. The Clive Barker Podcast is an independent editorial podcast and news blog that is not affiliated with or under contract by Seraphim Inc. This is a labor of love by the fans for the fans.
Thanks for listening.